to the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thank you for joining us today. Today is February 26, 2016. The year is flying by. And on Fridays, as you know, we have call-in Fridays. And I have decided that what I'm going to do is every couple of weeks, I asked a new friend of mine, Vince Easley, who is a talk show radio host in a couple of different venues. He has a website called whatmattersworldwide.yalasite.com. He is the host of a radio show called No Time for Rational Thinking every Friday at noon on reallibertymedia.com. And I thought I'd ask him to join me on these call-in Fridays every other week or so, because on call-in Fridays, few people call, and it usually is just me ranting. I thought it might be more engaging to have someone who has an alternative viewpoint on lots of things from me, discussing the things that we think are important on Fridays while we wait for our callers to get their courage up to call. So I wanted to welcome Vince. Vince, welcome to the radio show this morning.
Hey, Lonnie, thanks for having me. I'm very proud to be along with you and interject. I've called today a sounding board with contrast, and that's what I'm be calling myself.
Yeah, well, we definitely have contrast. We definitely have from our little bit of contact together, we definitely have very different points of view. I wanted to share, we're going to be talking about something, but I wanted to share a poem from one of my favorite books, Lao Tzu, The Way of Life. It's his number 75 poem. It's very short, but let me share this with you, and then we can get into what we wanted to talk about. People starve if taxes eat their grain, and the faults of starving people are the fault of their rulers. That is why people rebel. Men who have to fight for their living and are not afraid to die for it are higher men than those who, stationed high, are too fat to dare to die. So I thought that was kind of appropriate because Vince and I have been talking about what went on in Bend, Oregon at that wildlife reserve. And I, as you know, I've voiced my opinion. I'm not so sure. Vince tells me he thinks that's real. I still am. There's a lot about it that doesn't add up to me, and I still think it's kind of fishy the way the whole thing went down. I think it was a whole kind of a subversive game by the people in charge to see who would actually show up. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things is who would show up, and that's one of the things that I want to talk about. Not so much the principles of why those people were out there on that reserve, but I'd want to talk about why people don't. There was, these guys made video after video. Come on out, patriots, come stand for your rights. And everybody was supporting them on YouTube. There was that. I mean, Vince, when that show went live, when the quote so-called shootout went live, how many people were on that video feed? Several 100,000, right?
Oh, there was I saw I think maybe close to 100,000 at one time live. But yeah, hey, let me start out. Let me say hi to everybody here at UCY.TV and chat. We have a big crowd.
Great.
Uh, yeah, if you're listening downstream, I know this will be going up to your archives, and if you missed any of Lonnie's broadcast, UCY TV user on YouTube. So there's all the playlists of all the shows there. Good morning, especially to Dan B. Cooper over here at UCY, and he's our resident, the Donald, the Trumpster man. So I thought that would be funny for you as a Bernie Sanders supporter. But anyway, so at Real Liberty Media, I've set it to redirect right here to UCY.TV in the chat room. Thanks for joining over there, reallibertymedia.com and worldtruth.org. So we tie together, and I've got a lot of boats on the water, and UCY is my flagship, and it has been. I've been here for I guess, for about near 3 years or better, I guess.
Oh, well, that's great, Vince. Thank you for joining us. Let me give out the phone number in case anybody wants to call. The number is 718-717-8296. So as I normally do on Call-In Fridays is I wait for people to call and, discuss the things that are important on my heart, because the first 2 days of my radio show are mostly interviews now. So this has been one of the things, Vince and I were talking about this event that went down, but it really occurred to me that really the 5-year mark of Fukushima becoming a nuclear volcano is coming up. And I know that there's a lot of anti-nuke activists out there who are planning anniversary events, we're going to stand up. What really blows me away is how few people will actually stand up. We have millions of people in the city of New York. I mean, when I first got on this radio show, there was an article by Business Insider that said 6 million Americans are now drinking tritium-tainted water and nitrate-tainted water. 6 million people. That's on the low end. And, since then we have had Indian Point tell us now that there's billions of becquerels. An article came out that said there's 220 million becquerels per liter of iodine-129 hitting the West Coast. And, we've had, Porter Ranch spewing out their toxic waste. Where are the people in the streets, Vince? Why are people just willing to sit on their asses and do nothing?
Well, that's pretty multifaceted to answer that. And we would, of course, go back for generations now. I'm 50 plus, 51, I guess now. And when you look at a time period, like a century and 2 centuries, and you say, well, 50 years, that's a pretty long time in the scheme of things, right? But then here I am sitting at 50, and I'm thinking, well, 50 years is not really that long amount
exactly.
of time. So, there's been a scheme afoot for generations, far longer than my mere 50 years. So they've set in place this organization, and you can see examples all back through history. As you and I were talking, I could go back to the Hudson Bay Company and these other trading companies have been set that in a sense are the corporate structure of empire. And when we look at the United States today, or America, because we're Americans supposedly, but we are now operated with the multifaceted arms that make up the corporatocracy of the United States, which is altogether different. And we can look at the Constitution and the founding and the Revolution and the Civil War. But in fact, everything along the way is all incremental in setting up the point that we are today. And along the way, we find ways that they have done this by manipulation of even to the manipulation of intellect and in our schools and the so-called medical schools and psychiatry, and to the point where what we receive is our daily dose, and through television, through any number of means. We get it in societal interaction when we hear the parroting that comes from the pulpits and the the screen and the radio and so forth. So a lot of times I think we've just been pushed along, and most people are, crowded up, and we're working along trying to make our way in life, and so many things that, we don't have time for even to consider, let alone participating in and getting out there and in any number of ways of protest and bringing the word and accusation against those that are against us. And
look, it's not just, this is the thing. I think what happens, and we saw this in the Occupy movement. In the Occupy movement, people were out in the streets, and this is why Obama was quite efficient in squelching any hope and change that people had through squelching the Occupy movement. I mean, it was so, it's interesting because I held my nose both times, to be honest, that I voted for Obama. I mean, the first time I think Obama won, it was anybody but Bush. That was like, seriously, we didn't want anybody that could even resemble what he had done to us. And I think that's partly why he got in. The second time around, I held my nose. I was actually afraid of Mitt Romney, and in retrospect, maybe the Democrats would have acted like Democrats if we would have had a Republican president. So they might have been able to stave off some of the harm. We have been seriously harmed by the Bush administration, the first Bush administration, and then his son then they had his adopted son Clinton roll in, and then his own son roll in. So we've had, and now they're trying to shove the wife on us. So it's like, really seriously, we are in this. I believe that this is why I'm a huge fan of Bernie Sanders. I think America's in for the fight of its life right now. I really believe if, we are seriously in a bad world of hurt if we pick the wrong person. And frankly, in my view, that, and it looks like that may happen, that the Democrats are going to, figure out a way to steal the election from Bernie Sanders, who definitely has a popular vote among the Democratic Party. Then we're going to have Trump and Clinton, and really, I'm not voting for Clinton. So we'll have Trump as president, and that's how it's going to go. I mean, and they know that. See, this is the thing. This is the point here. They know exactly. Like they look at us. We go onto these social media sites. This was my contention about what happened in Bundy. I think they were counting heads, taking names and counting heads and seeing who's supporting and who's not. We're pretty open on the YouTube venue. I mean, I have a channel, Nuts for Art, on YouTube, and we're very open about our feelings, our emotions. We go there to spew out what we feel to get our freedom of speech in. It's partly why I've stopped making videos, because really we go to YouTube's regularly, spew out our thing. We get all these people, yay, you're doing great. And then when we do these protests, nobody shows up. Like, nobody shows up. Even the guys in band, nobody showed up. So I'd like to know what that's about. You know what I mean? Like, what keeps Americans from really caring about them? And I think that's really, it's about self-love. I don't think many Americans really do love themselves. I think we've been trained to have this constant negative conversation about ourselves.
I would say, yeah. I would sum up politics as in good old Bubba Bill, and so it would be like brownies for me. And if you had a little duty in there, and you can take this as pun too, so and please do. Yeah, no matter what, when you get politics, you got a little bit of that duty in there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the whole thing about politics is not, people that are driven to go to politics have a higher calling, many of them, and some of them are just straight out greedy. And frankly, that comes with the complicity, again, of the American people. Because, like, I know prior to 2000, prior to George Bush stealing the election, I was what I called a D-Democrat. I didn't pay attention to politics. I went to the polls every time I got a chance to. D, 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 D. If it was a female, vote for the female. Person of color, vote for the person of color. No regard for what they said, what they did. Just uninformed voter, just voting party politics. And then Bush stole the elections and the Democrats sat down. And I went, holy... I had thought prior to that time that it was probably, that's part of, quote, politics, to go to Washington, D.C. and get your family rich. I had accepted that. But when Bush blatantly stole the election. And in fact, people are whining about Scalia dying. Frankly, I did black backflips. I'm glad that guy's dead. He was one of the people who handed Bush the presidency. Bush was not elected. He was handed it to it by the Supreme Court. And Scalia was put there intentionally for this exact thing. He did his job. When Bush said mission accomplished, he did not mean the Iraq War. He meant we have tidied up the fascism in the United States. There's no getting out of it. They signed the Unpatriot Act, the NDAA. Gitmo was going. All of the Congress members were complicit with their lies. The media had been thoroughly purchased and bought for. So they have total, complete autonomy right now.
Well, people think that government doesn't work and the economy, it doesn't work. But in fact, it does work, and it works exactly as it is set up to work. These are managers. They're officers in a corporation, and that requires a profit. And it's a big sellout. And when considering the Federal Reserve, the thing that we use as currency, this trust that we have in this paper, it's a Ponzi scheme. So in order to maintain this, we have to continue this illusion that there's value in this. And at the same time, we're having to pay these extorters, these Guidos. If you don't pay, the Guidos show up, break your leg or shoot you. Lay you down in the snow. So we need to, first of all, realize where the authority lies, and realize that this government is no more than using legal as law, whereas the procedure, it has then become how it's carried out. And instead of the law, wherein the law is meant to for protection. Let me turn a page back here from this morning, re-listening to Hal Anthony behind the woodshed. So, Hal would say, I took some notes here, and to sum it up, it is to stop wrong, and I know you'll agree with this. Stop it before it starts, if you can. So, we have this. We suppose we have this liberty in this land, and it's nothing more than a range of motion, and we're cornered by this extrajudicial so-called jurisdiction that rules over us with legal as law, as I said, and so law is living in peace, and we would have the sheriff, and that he would keep the peace, and with the right of arrest. So when two people can't, if two people have a wrong against one another, and if you look at the Bundy situation and Burns as well, you'll see that there is a dispute, and instead of addressing that within the so-called legal system, it goes extrajudicial, and they show up with their Guidos, and they cause for execution of a warrant. And that means the execution of that so-called human being. It is a private and public partnership, and that is that corporatocracy, and that's how we're dealt with. So until we can get from the bottom up, and so without advocating politics, I think as Will Roberts, the late Will Roberts would say, get vocal local, and that means these judges and county judges, commissioners, or whatever else, wherever they're called, where you're at, we have to come forth and say, what do you represent? Are you protecting the law? Are you keeping the law? So that's what needs to be done in all of our addressing these officials, because many of them are criminals, and they need to be called out.
Well, look, the issue is not, let me give out the number in case anybody wants to join us. It's 718-717-8296. I think that the heart of this goes down to, what does the federal government, the rights, for me, I believe in the Bureau of Land Management. I think it has helped protect much of the protected, so-called protected lands from egregious raping of our lands by, I mean, let's just be clear. In the first place, the United States of America, how we created our country, we stole it and we murdered people. There was a genocide across this nation. So to say that the United States is a country, our country has been at war since its founding. We've only had 2 years of peace since its founding. It's a war machine. It destroys everybody in its wake. It has, we have this so-called Constitution that is a living, in theory, now this was, my indoctrination. It's a living article, so it grows and develops as it's being developed. The downside to what's happened, I think specifically since the beginning of the Fed really was the showering in of really America really going off track from what it could have been. I mean, we were still not the perfect nation at the last turn of the century, but with the founding of the Fed, it really became that corporatocracy. That's how long this plan's been in place, which is why when World War II happened, the Bush crime family had absolutely no problem selling arms to Hitler, because they believed in the eugenicist theory, and for them it was just about making money, just like it is today. They're out there making money.
Yeah. When we consider, okay, who has rights to the land, they consider the BLM, the Forestry Service, any of these other, they're actually not even government agencies, but kind of like contractors in a sense. And they're supposed to be like, okay, with the BLM, we're going to set up administration to this. And so they came in, before that there was some other agency.
No, there was not. That's not true. Harry Truman founded the BLM. Harry Truman founded it to, to be honest, one of the things that I think why the BLM got created was because of the uranium that was all over the place on these private lands. That's what they wanted. It started right after World War II, 1946.
Yeah.
And they started looking around going, wow, there's all these natural reserves and we could have that uranium they want. And in fact, they're still on the uranium. Their thirst for uranium, which for me, personally, leads me into another conversation about why we have nuclear pollution and on our planet. I don't think it's an accident. I think they do want it. So
for sure. Yeah, it's all meant to be, stolen in this scheme, this Ponzi scheme of for backing up this debt. So yeah, that's for sure. But there were agencies that controlled or administered lands. When we go back to the indigenous folks of this land, I mean, everybody came from somewhere. Nobody occupied land. So the fact that right now we're dealing with who has rights to the land right now, I think as people try to claim there's a difference now between the natives of the land and the Europeans and so forth, even with the Africans. I mean, we're all one people here now. So I don't think we have the luxury of trying to divide in camps of, I have more right or they have less right. We need to see where we.
I think that we need to decide that statement is something that I would have said maybe 5 years ago, but in retrospect now, I think about this. Like, our country did sign contracts, and it is a contract with the native nations. We do have native nations that are really seriously being ignored. Like, our country has never really honored a single treaty to Native Americans. Like, our history of honoring treaties is practically zero, and we're still doing it. More than 60% of the uranium tailings have been dumped on Native American lands. The Native Americans are now suffering, and we're not even reporting on it. They are suffering tremendous cancers, death, leukemias, genetic birth defects, autism, diabetes. The list goes on, and that brings up the point of maybe it's because the radiation makes people docile. I'm just dumbfounded at how people are just willing to sit on their hands and go, That's really good, and I really hate that, but I'm not going to pull myself away from my computer long enough. I don't want to be caught. I think has a lot to do. It's the same thread with the Bundy Ranch thing, and the same thing that happened out in Bend. People don't want to be fingered by the government. They don't want to stand out. They don't want to have their pictures taken. They don't want to be at protests. They know that the government is insidious. I think murdering of Aaron Schwartz and Michael Hastings was a pretty big warning to a lot of people. I don't know.
Well, you know what? I put my face out there and my voice, and I'm proud to in the Gap in Bunkerville. And you know what? I would be up in there with some other folks, probably right now in federal custody, if plans hadn't changed for me, and I would have been out there as media, just like I did in Bunkerville. And I think we've got some serious questions.
What's Bunkerville? What is Bunkerville?
That's where the Bundy thing took place with the feds back, a couple years back now.
Yeah.
So I spent some weeks out there on the ground. I covered that.
Let's cover that a little bit, because that is seriously, why is it that those people would not cooperate instead of going through the legal processes to assert their rights? Why did they have to pick up arms and point them? I mean, honest to God, Vince, if those people had been black at Bundy and in Bend, they would have been dead the first day, the first hour. You get 6 armed black men taking over a Federal Reserve, they would have been dead in 20 minutes, and it would have been on and off the news in 2 days. Seriously.
Well, I agree. I think that's probably most likely true. But as far as what happened at the Bundys, the process was not addressed, and that's where the sheriff failed, because he was supposed to intervene at that point, like I was speaking earlier. He failed his duty. That's because he's involved in politics. You remember the brownies and duty.
Yeah, but he failed, but still, even if he failed in his duty, why did they have to pick up arms and point it at people who are, I mean, this is my thing about the whole thing of we're gonna protect our land. No, it's all of our land. It's not their land. It's not, I mean, to me, the BLM represented, to me, and I'm just going to tell you because I'm completely outside that movement. For me, the BLM, when they were out there on the Bundy Ranch, they were asserting their legal right to get that guy off of federal. I mean, he owes the government $1 million. He's refused to pay his taxes.
That's an assertion, and that's not actually true.
And then I think about people like Kevin Blanche, who, he got some rancher was letting his cattle free range, right? He caught him drinking polluted water from a nuclear processing plant. Now, this is a cow that Kevin got this on video, took it to his elected officials. Yeah, the cows were taken off there pretty much within 2 days. And Kevin, by the way, was kicked off a disability for causing a big stink, of which it caused him a big hassle. And 3 months later, the friggin' cows are back out there drinking from the polluted water again. And those cows go to market. So it's we're sort of, like, we cannot unmesh ourselves from the nuclear pollution in this country. We have to have an honest conversation about what it means to allow free ranging.
Okay, and I think that's a good point, because the wholeness of the entirety is these little things right here that all are spotted all over the way, and they make it up. Okay, so free range, the right of the miner to, and these are rights. This is not something that the government can grant. Okay, so the government, first of all, with these extrajudicial agencies, are illegal. Well, they legalize themselves, but they are unlawful. And this is
I disagree with that, Vince, because they're not.
Well,
I mean, they were actually passed by Congress. Congress has a right to make these agencies.
See, that's the difference between legal and lawful. When procedure is used as law, it is extrajudicial, and we are in fact we are occupied by these agencies that are, as I say, Guidos. They do not stand to support law, but legal as law. and when you need to kill somebody, like Lavoy Finnegan, that was on his way peacefully to address the public, and they ambush him, set him up, This speaks loudly of how far they are willing to go. If you do not comply, you will die. Plain and simple.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that, but although you are right, this is the point that I think you are going to die anyways. They have no regard for human life. Like these agencies right now, I believe that the NRC and the federal government ignoring the nuclear pollution is committing murder all across this nation. And for the sanctity, right now the NRC changed their rates of acceptable radiation to 1. They know, they put this on their website, every 1 to 1.7 person is going to get cancer. 1 to 1.7, that's less than every other that's more than every other person. So right now the NRC says the risk of having almost 1 out of every 2 people get cancer in this country is worth the benefit of them having nuclear power. That to me is murder. That's not a reasonable thing to say. And why people are not talking, it's even like this thing about the free ranging. For me, I think we need to have somebody who knows where the nuclear pollution is to keep cattle from free ranging on it, because cattle, the level of radiation when it bioaccumulates at such a grotesque rate inside of especially cattle animals because they eat so much grass. We got to have somebody doing something that knows where this stuff is.
After all, who will build the roads? And I laugh because first of all, we assume that we need somebody to tell us how we should live, that we're not smart enough to make our own choices.
No, but the point is, Vince, that we live in a country where we have the ability to say who builds the roads. Like, it's not just one person telling us. That's why we go to the election polls. That's why we vote locally. That's why you decide on your city council, your county commissioners. That's why it really does matter to, get active locally and know who your county commissioners are, know who your city council is, understand your local process. Because those are the people that build your roads. Those are the people that asked, for these big contracts to build the roads and build the highways and put the infrastructure up. I mean, one of the things that's happened in our country since the Republicans took over is they're drowning the baby in the bathwater. They're refusing what was it, about 8 or 9 years ago, we had that big bridge that collapsed in back east. And they did this big thing over all the bridges and all the dams in our country. Well, I know I live right beneath a dam that has a D rating, and the dam got turned off because when the Army Corps of Engineers came in and took a look at it, it's dangerous. So they shut that dam down, and we're praying that there's no earthquake out here.
Well, I'll tell you why there's no rebuilding an infrastructure, and that's because all the wealth, it's come to the point in this Ponzi scheme that it's all right there. All the cream is being skimmed right off the top, and there's no money left for. I mean, where's the manufacturing? That's all part of it too. It's gone. Not only is the jobs gone, but you know what? How many instances that you can find where the equipment, to be able to, for textiles and any number of manufacturing, they've shipped the equipment overseas over to China, where a bowl of rice and $1 a day is luxury. So when we wake up and realize that we're basically about the same point right here. This country has been slated for destruction, and then to rise out of the ashes. There's their plan.
Look, this is the interesting thing. When people get mad at Obama for his signing statements, but if you do some history, he hasn't done more signing statements than most of them, except for the one president who signed the most presidential signing executive orders was Roosevelt. FDR, because he had to shove the New Deal down people's throats. He signed 3,500 executive orders because the bankers, the industrialists, they were not having it. They did not mind having poor people in America, and they actually believed that the useless feeders should die. They really did not believe in public education. They did not believe in Social Security. They did not believe in the government building the roads or the bridges. They believed in tolls. I mean, it really was headed towards a pretty rapid corporatocracy, which is why he took very hard action against them. And since World War II, they've been chipping away at it, in fact, convincing people that having, the government sponsor building roads is a bad thing. Maybe corporations could build our roads for us. Go to a country where that happens and see how the roads look and see what the tolls cost and understand that, that's a way to keep people off the roads. If you're too poor, you can't go down a road in many countries. So to me, these are, in terms of us maintaining, I think where we have really gone wrong in terms of maintaining our dream of the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, for me, it roots down to the industrial military complex, which started with the bankers, the, exchange stabilization fund, the secret banks that came in when the Fed came in. That's where our country really started going down the wrong road.
Yeah, we're definitely way down that wrong road, and
way down.
The road that the government.
Well, let me give out the number again in case anybody wants to join us. The number is 718-717-8296. You can call in and join Vince Easley and myself, Lonnie Clark, here on the Age of Fission radio show. We invite our listeners to call in and join in this exchange of ideas about my thing is, how do we get people out in the streets or making the phone calls or whatever it is? People are quite timid. Like, they are so afraid to call and dig into what it means to be involved in our government. Yesterday I was on the Facebook page for the Westlake landfill, and they were saying how the H.R. 4100 bill is stuck in committee at the House of Representatives. Are you familiar with the 4100 bill?
No, I'm not.
Well, let me tell you very briefly. Most of us know that St. Louis, there is a fire that is underground. They call it a smoldering event. But it's basically a chemical fire about 200, 300 feet down in this big, huge landfill right next to the St. Louis airport that is less than 1,000 feet away from nuclear pollution from World War II, from the Manhattan Project. Uranium, they basically have uranium waste. It was the highest form of uranium ever processed there. The 230,000 tons of it is just outrageous. Well, there's a fire going on, and the EPA has been messing around with it and fumbling and bungling it. So the people of St. Louis put pressure finally on their federal officials to move the EPA out of that position and let the Army Corps of Engineers handle it. So it's really just a paper shuffling thing, which agency is going to do what. Well, for the people that run the Westlake landfill, Republic Services, they definitely do not want to change venues because it's going to cost them money, $500 million. So they have this big lobbyist group, and they're buying congressmen's hands and senators' hands, and the Senate passed their bill. Now, in order for this to be moved, the House has to pass their bill. And it's stuck in committee, and people yesterday on Facebook were saying, well, there's nothing we can do. And I'm like, dudes, look up the committee. So I basically went online, found out where this thing was at, and it's stuck in the natural resources and environment, water and natural resource environment. It's been shuffled through one committee. And really, it's going to take a lot of people calling these committee officers and people who are on that committee to make them feel the pressure, because if the only people they're talking to are lobbyists, that's who they're going to hear from. And they're going to do exactly what they want. So I think it's really important for us to decide to do our homework and figure out, we may not like how the government currently works, but if it's all you got to figure out how to use it. That's kind of my objection about the Bundy thing. Figure out how the process works and then use it to your advantage. It's not all just in the shit can, so to speak. You know what I mean? We can make positive changes if we decide we're going to make the positive change. That's the thing. We have to make a determination. That's why I talk about EFT. That's why I talk about healing us from the inside out, because we're not going to manifest the exterior world that we want unless we heal ourselves and go up against these people.
I agree. Make a wrong right where you can.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the only way we're going to make the wrong right is for us to decide to do it. That's the only way. We have to choose. We have to choose that we're going to do what we believe is the right thing. And that was kind of the sad thing out that I saw happening in Bend, because I still kind of believe it was kind of a government setup deal for people to count heads to see who would really show up out there. And there were some people who really did show up out there who really did get arrested and shot at. You know what I mean? There really were people, but not that many. I mean, ironically, there were not. How many people do you think ended up showing up out there total?
Oh, I can't give you some numbers, but a lot of people passed through. And I know personally some people that passed through and may be looking at warrants down the line for arrest. They're going back to 2014 with Bunkerville and arresting people that participated there. My face is very, very public there, as far as AP photographs, a news feed. I was there and I came armed with my phone, my feet, and my voice. So
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important that we do where we can stand as witness, if nothing more. And talking about choose, well, yeah, take the issue and digest it. And it needs you need to choose to be able to get that down and after digesting, and then you can decide where that you can participate at. And there's so many ways that a person can affect change for the better in this world. And I think if we don't all choose to do so now, then we're going to be really. It may be too late. We have this point in time in history right now. This is the most pivotal point of history that there has ever been. And we have the ability to tip this right now. We have our fulcrum and we have our lever, and we need to tilt this right side up again and participate where you can. Is what I say. Where we disagree, we can fight and argue all day long, but where does that get us?
Right.
So with you and I in deciding to have a conversation. That's what I like about you. I think that we can both digest what it is the other has to say. Hey,
yeah,
Becky.
I think that's important, the digest part, because we're not just talking at each other. I actually, you say things in a way like you see things in a different way and you understand things in a different way. So it kind of is changing how I think about some of this stuff. I'm sort of milling it over. This is part of what we have to acknowledge is we have a certain resistance. We all have our points of view, and there's a certain resistance to changing that. But really, this is how we move. This is why I think the human race is actually progressing, because we are able to have these conversations, and even though we don't match up exactly, we can actually begin to help each other understand that we've got to move the whole human race forward together. We're not going to do it at each other's throats. We're only going to do it forward and together by embracing each other and allowing that. That's to me what it means to be American, is allowing the differences. We have to allow the differences. So let me give the number out one more time. We have about 15 minutes left. It's 718-717-8296. You are welcome to give us a call and join Vince Easley and myself, Lonnie Clark, on the Age of Fission radio show. And Vince and I are sitting there just talking. I thought I would invite Vince on the radio show with us on this call-in Friday so that you don't have to just listen to me giving my opinions while we're waiting for people to give us a call. So I appreciate you joining me, Vince. This has been really pretty stimulating conversation for me, at least. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. I'm really glad to be here and to be able to have a conversation. And one thing I don't do is debate or argue. So I'm proud that I know several people that have all types of viewpoints on what it is that the is, I guess, as you might say, that what we're in together. And I've shown many times how people from the left and right, big shout out to Patty Beers, PM Beers, and Thomas Robert Lockavar Stewart. He is a friend of mine that I met in Bunkerville. He made a trip out to Burns. Part of the media, and that's what we are. And as Jules says, with that banner she made, I love it. Become the media. Take back the future.
Yeah. Well, we don't really have a choice because at least the media in the United States is completely sewed up by the people who are the corporatocracy, the people that are basically pulling the purse strings, and they're just trying to, manipulate people into one point of view or another, and I mean, I talk about the 4 agreements on a regular basis, and the first agreement is be true to your word, and one of the things that means when you read it is understanding that our life on this planet is a spiritual journey, and we all come here with we have a mission, a sort of our own dreamland that we're living in. Your reality is different than my reality. I have my own dream. Like this life, this physical life that we have is kind of like more like a projection in a dream, and we're here to complete certain tasks and to grow as spiritual beings. And that's why when we come across people that have different points of view, it's really important just to let them have their point of view, because we're not going to change them. I agree with you. It's no point in arguing and trying to convince people of your point of view to theirs, because people are drawn to different points of view because they're involved in their own dreamland. They have their own set of missions that they have to go through. So I think it's really important for us now that we are coming into this time, especially in the age of fission, where we're having to live with this nuclear reality. It permeates. People don't even realize it. This is the thing that really blows me away. People don't realize how much the age of fission affects our lives, how much the nuclear pollution is permeating every aspect of our lives in a way that we have not even acknowledged. I mean, the high levels of diabetes, I even believe that the dim-wittedness, the slowness, the mental collapse of a lot of people we have never really studied that, actually. There's been no real studies about how nuclear pollution affects your mental state. It's always been on your physical body. So I think we're at the precipice of a whole, if humans are going to survive, we're on the precipice of a whole new way of looking at life. So
You better believe it. And I think it's important to remember that points of view are no more than perspective. And a point of view does not make a truth. It only is an observation of evidence of what it is we're perceiving. So for myself on this voyage of discovery, that the what matters worldwide as kind of my theme, I set out to find as many opposing perspectives other than my own as I could, and I think it gives me a real good look of what it is that we've got going here. And talking about media, this right here coming up in an hour after we're done here, so about an hour and 10 odd minutes. I have Antonio Castellan. He's my guest. He's a general assignment reporter for NBC News affiliate News 3 Las Vegas, KSNV TV. So that's today at noon Central, 10 a.m. in Vegas, and 7 p.m. out in Denmark. So we're going to talk some about life as a mainstream reporter, some, I guess, and also he was there. He interviewed me, and I was on the news out there in 3, and that had to do with the supposed racial comment by Clive Bundy. Also, Antonio was assaulted in a way by some folks out there shouting and jeering, and we're going to talk about how that front was led by who I perceived in my video. See, I have the whole video. I've got a short video that was put up, but I was filming the whole thing. So
out at the Bundy Ranch, you're talking about?
Yeah. And I have a link there that I'll post over to the chats where you guys can go see all the links.
Is that on your website? What Matters Worldwide?
It is.
.yolasite.com. Okay.
Yola, it's YOLASITE.com. Yeah. So no bad questions. That's today with Antonio Castellan. He's reporter since I think about like 2001. He's a good guy. Now, as my perception of him when I first saw him and met him out there and watching him, he's a good guy, and I think I hope to today prove where hey, mainstream and alternative, I think we have some of the same objectives in mind, and that's sharing people's voice, and that That is what Antonio says he does there. He goes out, knocks on doors, and
Well, I would venture to say if you talk to Antonio, the one thing he is not allowed to talk about is the uranium poisoning all over Nevada and on the native lands. I mean, really, honestly, this is what I mean. For me, it always comes back to this because there is an elephant in the room that is summarily being ignored. He may be willing to talk about gun rights, the BLM rights, all these other things, but the one thing he will not talk about is the nuclear pollution that is. And if he did, I venture to say he would lose his position at the television station. This is how deep the deep state really is. And really the eugenicist agenda, I mean, really seriously, and for me, I really believe that a lot of this is just kind of taking our eye off of the ball of really we're in an environmental catastrophe that is unprecedented in human history. And while we may have these issues about the BLM, about all these other rights in our Constitution, the elephant in the room is that we have a fascist state that literally is willing to kill its people and the rest of the people on this planet for profit.
Well, I'm gonna take that challenge to Antonio, and I'm gonna ask him about the uranium.
Okay, and he will say he doesn't know about it. That would be my guess.
I bet he does. We'll have a bet.
Be curious. I'd be curious to see what he does about it because there is all kinds of uranium. I mean, it's all over Nevada. There is all kinds of nuclear pollution. You can go. I mean, I could lend you to different sites, but there's, you can just start doing some Googling. And it's one of the things, though, that really in the media they are not allowed to talk about. And honestly, this is what I mean. I think this whole thing about getting people to talk about gun rights and the BLM is a manipulation to keep us from talking about the fact that millions and millions of Americans are now drinking tainted water, whether it's from uranium, tritium, nitrates. Lead is a radioactive isotope that comes to us after having been broken down in a whole series of other isotopes that are in our water. So it's frankly the elephant in the room, like I said before, but I can't wait to hear it. So that's going to be I'm on the Pacific coast, so that's 10 a.m. my time, correct? Because you're Central Standard Time at noon, correct?
Yes, that's right. And in the second hour, I got Lori Ann coming back, and she's going to be giving us some definitions of legalese, a continuation. So I had her on.
And who's Lori Ann?
She's a friend of mine with Thomas Robert Lockevar Stewart. He does Dirty Uncle Sam Resurrect the Republic on RBN, Republican Broadcasting Network. Mm-hmm. Good friend of mine. He was very gracious while I was in Bunkerville. He allowed me the use of his coach, his motorhome there for some interviews.
Nice.
And also, I don't want the name Jason Patrick to be forgotten. He's also a reporter, and he's in jail now out there in federal custody. And he is a reporter. And people are talking about Pete Santilli being an issue of the First Amendment right. I think this is very important. I don't care what you think about Santilli, but to be held without bail, just like all these other guys out here, this is the strong arm of enforcement. And
so they're all being held without bail, all those people from the band?
Mm-hmm.
So even Pete Santilli's being held without bail?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the strong arm of intimidation. And under what premises is he being held without bail?
Oh, they're racking up more and more charges, but just being opposed to the.
It's the same MO that they did with the Occupy movement. It's the same exact MO. When people got arrested and the Occupy movement, they were disappeared into the New York jails for 2-3 weeks at a time. In fact, people during the Occupy movement, if you got arrested, there was no way to find out about you for 2, 3, 4, or 5 days. People just disappeared and then they popped back up. And people were quite intimidated. This is all about intimidating people into silence. It's not about the issue of the BLM land or anything about that. It's about sit down and shut up. That's what it's about. Like, do not act out, because if you do, look at Tim DeChristopher. Tim DeChristopher spent 2.5 years, 3 years in a high high-level federal prison, and now he cannot be seen, I think, for 5 years with any activists for doing what? He went in to protect some lands from being sold to some corporations who had every plan on fracking it. He went in and bid on property. When he didn't have the cash in hand, he won the bid. Within 24 hours, he actually got the money to pay for the land, but the government said it was still illegal for you to bid on land. Even though he was bidding on land that was being sold illegally, he went to jail. And that is about intimidation. That's all it is. But I think that's what it takes here, Vince. I think it takes for us to be willing to get arrested, for us to stand up to these people, to highlight we have our rights to really stand up to these people.
Yeah, I say live or die on your feet, never on your knees.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe I could pull a gun on somebody, but I don't think I would pull a gun out on anybody personally. Like myself, no. I mean, I would rather be arrested than pull a gun out on a federal marshal. I'd rather go to jail and figure that one out.
I was being metaphorical there. I'm not saying, just to be clear.
So let's talk about this because we have a few minutes left. Thank you for joining us. And I really, nobody called in, but we had a very lively conversation. I really appreciate it. So I want to highlight this again. I would encourage our listeners to listen to Vince Easley. His radio show is called No Time for Rational Thinking. And it is, you find that on reallibertymedia.com. Is that correct?
That's right. And on the player over at worldtruth.org, that's actual server for our World Truth, Real Liberty Media Radio. So there's a chat box over there on worldtruth.org. That's the social media site. Thanks, Grammy Mary. Thanks, Grimner, for the reallibertymedia.com and all that great work over there. And go and explore. There is a lot of content, just as well as right here at ucy.tv/news. Lots of good feeds there, right there. And there's also a chat room where you can engage in lively discussion there with all the fine folks, the resident chatters. And thank you, Jules. She has compiled an incredible amount of people's voices that are speaking up for what matters worldwide. And I invite you along for the journey. Join in. Be a part of what matters worldwide. Make a stand where you can and make something right.
It really does matter, and I think that's the value of UCY.TV, not to self-promote the station, but I think we ought to because, and even worldtruth.org, I mean, this is the thing. These are people, we call ourselves citizen journalists, but really when we have a so-called media that is co-opted by the corporations, we have to get the facts out and the truth out. And what the facts are, the facts sort of mold what the truth is in a way. I mean, everybody's quote truth is different, but the reality is we know for a fact that our liberties, our privacy have been taken away from us, quite literally, and it's up to us to stand up against it. And this is why the nuclear pollution for me is like number one, because our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness has literally been stolen by the nuclear industry. Because when you're sick and your grandchildren are going to get sick and the planet is dying, there's no right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I think it's really important for us to stand up and support independent media. This station does go on contributions. We do require, people to kick in a bit of money. It does really help. So,
well, I would like to say that those people that are carrying these venues, Jules, Grimner, and Grammy Mary, they're footing the bill almost entirely out of their own pocket. So there is ways, shop through the Amazon links on UCY.TV, and Real Liberty Media also has one. There's donate buttons, and if you have the financial ability to support folks, I think that these networks are very important, and that we keep them out there. And thanks so much for all you're doing, Lonnie. I really love what you do, and I seldom miss your broadcast, and a lot of times I find myself going to catch up at the YouTube channel over at UCY TV.
And they're also posted on my Nuts for Art channel, too, under the same station, Age of Fission. Well, we've got about 10 seconds left. Thank you for joining us, Vince. Catch Vince at No Time for Rational Thinking. Put your courage feet on, and we will talk with you guys soon. Take some action and get engaged. Talk to you later.